board. This is the budget meeting, the first budget meeting for the 2025-2026.
Should hang with that. There we go.
Now he's on. And the time is 5:08. And we basically have introduced the staff, but if the board members introduce themselves to everybody here. And why don't we take it around. Kent, you want to just introduce yourself and then the rest of the budget committee.
Kent Brown, community member of the budget committee.
Dan, are we recording?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We're recording.
I thought, didn't I say that? Or
No.
I thought I did. I'm sorry.
And for the
We are
record,
recording.
the person at the end of the table is John Prather. He's the chair of the board. That wasn't on the recording. I'm Simeon Dreyfus. I'm the secretary of the board.
I'm Brad Mellon, lead operator.
Well, we've already introduced staff, so.
Jeff McBrayer, board member.
Sam Brown, community member on the budget committee.
Susan Miller, also a member on the budget committee.
Craig Child, a member of the budget committee.
Jim?
Jim,
Jim Carlson, board member.
okay. So what we have in your package is a letter to the community, which is, well, let me back up for just a moment. Gary Keene is also a member of the board. He is the budget officer, but he's gone to Hawaii.
He's on an airplane as we speak.
Right. Should have landed by now, I think.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway. But the first item, and this is just a draft of a letter to the community, and it is basically the budget message. So we can talk about that later. What I'm thinking is we'll go through and look at the budget. The budget has been put together by Dan, our superintendent, and Aaron, the office manager, as best they could figure as far as costs go. And Dan, you can interrupt, add to as much as you'd like. And I figure this is sort of an introduction, sort of a cursory look. You can see on the first page, the general fund. You have the two preceding years, and then what is being proposed by the budget officer over in the budget for next year's set of columns. And that's what's proposed. And the next column will be next month, which will come up with what's approved by the budget committee. And then at the June board meeting, it will be adopted and then acted upon for the rest of the new coming fiscal year. If anybody has any questions at any time, please feel free to talk or raise your hand or just interrupt us.
John, something I noticed last year, and it's here again this year. I don't know if it came up last year, but I know that under the historical data on the left-hand side, those first two columns fall under a subheading of actual. So the numbers in there seem like they're probably budget numbers because they're fairly round. Is that something that we could take a note for next year and think about putting in the actual historical numbers there? Because otherwise this ends up just being all about a budget, but there's really no grounding in what's actually happened.
Well, you can't, because this is the column under historical is what was budgeted. those were the numbers that were approved.
Okay. How is that different than the third column that is kind of under a different type of heading? Because that was the actual budget that was adopted. It says budget, whereas the other one says actual.
Which one?
First page.
Oh, okay.
So it's second preceding year and then first preceding year and then the budget that was adopted, which you're saying actual in your mind should be what was actually spent, I'm assuming.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Because otherwise there's really no grounding in reality here. It's all just a budget number, but we don't know what was actually incurred for those periods.
Right, because this is a projection for the year. It's not an actual spend. It's not an end of the year audit. You don't enter numbers here how you wind up with this. These are what were, like, say line one says 33,290, then the following is 90,000.
Right.
Those are projected cash carry forwards.
Mhm.
So Craig, is the problem the word actual? Should we change that?
If we're not going to put in actuals, then maybe we should change that.
That's misleading.
But in terms of the overall,
We don't make these forms.
right.
These are state forms. They're already filled out. Just get to add the numbers to them in the appropriate place.
I think that's a very valid question. And I think we need to find out and do a little research and find out how this is viewed by the state people.
Okay.
These
And
are
I don't want to
actual
derail.
budgeted numbers. That's why my understanding from the budget classes I've gone to,
Right.
these actuals have to represent what was budgeted for that fiscal year.
Okay.
So if we try to, I understand how you're applying actual.
Mhm.
But these are the actual numbers that were approved by the board and the budget committee each fiscal year.
Yeah, and I do understand that. I don't want to derail the conversation, but as a community member looking at this, I really don't have any grounding in what was actually spent in any period. All I have is a budget, and a budget.
That's what this is.
Okay.
This is no grounding on what was spent.
Okay.
These are, all these budgets are projected for the next fiscal year.
Right. It just makes it more difficult for someone coming in from the outside to evaluate this year's budget if you only have prior budgets to look at. You don't know, well, were the budgets good budgets? Did we spend to those budgets?
I believe the representation of each annual is to show an increase or decrease in expenditures. If that makes sense. So by the way things are set up, you can see in personnel services, or you can see the actual, like if you go to line 84003 sewer service,
Mhm.
those are the user rates.
Right.
And those are actual. The problem is it's not what we actually receive. Most years we are lacking $25,000 to $30,000 of payments.
We probably need to get some clarification from the Department of Revenue, what their interpretation is of the actual columns.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking.
Yeah,
These are the actual ones in each prior year that were adopted.
right. But I
Not,
understand.
not spent,
Okay.
that each budget, each board adopted each and every year for expense.
See, but Craig's comment is useful and valid in a way that as a member of the community or even the board, it's kind of hard to look at what you're projecting unless you kind of know what was actually spent, which is hard to do. But
That's
an
that's not how you do this. I'm sorry. I mean, I have to go by budget law. This general fund,
Mhm.
this first page shows you what was approved each and every year.
Okay. I mean, if that's how it has to be done, then it's how it has to be done. I'm just saying, as a community member, it makes it more difficult to provide you much input that is grounded in it.
You won't find expenditures in here, like where did you wind up after that budget was in? You won't find it. These are all,
Right.
except for your LB forms that will show your debt, your bonds, your debt. because those are already on the spreadsheet. that
Right.
you just enter the number.
Right, you know that those are always gonna be exactly what you budgeted.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Well, just as a comment, I agree with Craig that, the process to be most beneficial would be best if it compares against actual. And I understand the forms and why they're done the way they are, because the state defines it that way. A way that you could partially answer this question would just be to have either another sheet or another column that would line up here and say, here was our actual for the last year.
Right.
And that would, I know it would help me too. Say, oh, well, that makes sense. They were, I see why they're projecting upward. Because I agree with you. This is difficult to relate to reality.
So I think about the only way I think to get a resolution of this is if the budget committee and board would look at maybe the last financial statement, which is not something the audit looks at, but it'll show you. Let me pull it up here real quick, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about. So the board looks at this financial statement.
Right.
And on this last column, to date, so this one is for end of March.
Mhm.
This will show you what percentages were used
Mhm.
of this budget amount that you're talking about on this form.
Which
So you would look and see it.
just,
So, yeah, so you,
just to observe, that's 3/4 of the year.
Right, so you might expect to see all the numbers at about 75%, more or less, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of depends on how things.
when they, and as long as they, when you see red, you automatically think, okay, you went over. Well, unfortunately, the way the auditor has us do it, this goes red because we got more interest. Refund at the end.
Oh, really?
So,
Yeah,
and don't feel bad. I've been doing this for almost 30 years and it took me 10 to figure out what the state was talking about. Because none of this makes sense, but this is how we have to fill these forms out. Right. We could add in for the budget committee to look at, so you're gonna come for at least 2 months.
Mhm.
So you can show the end of March,
Mhm.
and then when you come back to the next budget meeting before you approve, you can see the change and probably the decrease or increase.
Yeah,
Because if you look at last year's on the LB form 20 that we're looking at, you saw a cash carry forward estimate of 180,100.
right.
Well, last year we estimated, because this is the column that's adopted, and then this is adopted, that's what, right. We actually had $234,000 cash carry forward. That's not represented on here because you did not adopt that. It's not what you approved.
Right.
This is what you approved. This is an actual. What changes this number, sit down with the office manager, we look at projections to the end of June. So if something doesn't get paid out by the end of June, it changes your cash carry forward.
Right.
So these are budget amounts that you're looking at that we're budgeting for the projected year,
Mhm.
for the starting July 1st. This will show you what you actually were at in the last year's column.
I think having something like that would be very helpful.
Okay.
For, at least for me, and it sounds like maybe.
And this is what the board goes by too, as well, from month to month. We're pretty good, but that's what we go through. So this is your actual,
Mhm.
this is your actual standing,
Right,
That would be good.
and this is what the estimated budget is for the fiscal year.
right. Yep.
So I think we can, Aaron, I think we could simply, and Donna, we can simply add this in here
Yeah,
to the budget packet.
just, and then perhaps, I don't know, since the prior year, the earlier year even than this year, we know what it was at the end. So we could even add a column with what it was for 23, 24.
Well, you can just, you can
You
simply
can
just
have that
take
document.
this.
Yeah.
You can sit, because you're actually approving next year's.
Mhm.
If you want to see what the expenditures were up into the current year where we're at right now,
Yeah.
this gives you that live view.
Yeah.
Okay, we're halfway through April, so we can't
Mhm.
produce this document till the end of April.
Sure. For just the most recent.
Yeah, so we can definitely update that to the budget committee. That's no problem.
Okay.
This
No, that-
is a public document. I mean, you
Yeah.
can look at, And it's easier for me to answer questions too. Why did you have to up that line item and double it from the year before? Well, I can point to here, well, due to a
Yep.
pump costed $155,000 is what we have to increase something.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I would like that. That would be very helpful.
So
Thank you.
I think this would help you out more than trying to change the state's documents to make it say something that we're not. So,
Okay.
Okay, I don't know, we'll go through it real quick if you want to go to page 2. That gets into what is projected for salaries. And basically, my understanding from Dan is that he looks around and sees what other salaries that are like in the local area
and throughout the whole state.
and throughout the state. Not necessarily nationally, but throughout the state to come up with the numbers that they come up with. And you told me you were looking at, was it 4%? So as far as an increase goes, which is probably consistent with other.
What I found through the state, other operations through cities and other districts and stuff, the raises for employees go from 3 to 6%, actually 6.5%. And so I tried to land on something that's more reasonable and most that aligns more with COLA.
Okay.
And part of that is we would intend to keep the workforce in place and not have people running because they're going to make a few more dollars somewhere down the road, you know. So that's why the 4% and the number that they had come up with. Then you have the employer payroll costs, and you'll probably also, I'm sorry, see a couple changes in the personal services salaries, in that we had a position was open for a part of the year and some changes.
Well, we all see that here. I mean, that's
that one.
No, not for the future, but when you compare it to the past, it's there. It's
So when you look at the other document, that will
Right.
show
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Like if you have one line item for one employee that's at 4.99% used and everybody else that's 75,
Right.
that position was probably empty all year.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Okay,
Can we go back to page 1 for just a minute?
sure.
The board has talked about the reasons why that cash carry forward line has increased. I wanted to have you just sort of review that for the other members of the budget committee.
Okay, we spoke to our auditor and we have to take, because we had the main pump station, the catastrophic failure there. And the insurance company is estimating around $225,000 for repair for that pump station.
Okay.
Right now, I'm currently about 180,000, but not all the invoices will come in yet. So we have to put in here for cash carry forward, anticipating that the insurance checks will come in next fiscal year. The one pump takes 18 weeks to get here. That puts us in the middle of July. So, yeah, but I'm just explaining how it works. So any expenditures that we have between now and the end of June has to reflect on here if they don't come through. You can't go back and add it in after the budget's adopted. So this is not a part of the user fees. This doesn't reflect user fee amounts.
Okay.
So this reflects basically what we think we're gonna have cash in the bank in general fund. And you'll see the same thing once you get to capital resource fund. You'll see the same thing.
I have a couple of questions on just some terminology here, because I'm new to this. IGA, what does that stand for?
Intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, and AR certification.
Assess. It's taxes.
County,
Assessed revenue. Assessed revenue. Okay,
Oh, it is, that's revenue. It's taxes. Yeah, taxes to be received.
okay.
I've never been asked that before.
I'm sorry.
I feel like I need to study for this.
Well, I didn't get all the way through the paper, so I didn't have enough time.
Yeah, you just got it right now.
Right.
Okay, here we are. Well, I don't know. Do you have more questions on any of the acronyms? Okay.
No. No, that was it on this page anyway.
then, we have materials and services.
Oh, John, I'm gonna stop you there because I've got a couple of questions on that section of payroll taxes. So I understand the 4% increase in payroll, no problems with that. But I'm seeing that payroll taxes have increased by 22%, not, and I was kind of expecting to be more like 4%. So I was wondering if you could walk through why that has gone up so much, as well as the employee retirement system. Both of those went up far more than payroll.
So those are actual numbers we get towards the end of the year. And I think we wound up the end of last year, it was, what was it, 50. So we have to, it's so that we don't go exceed a line item, we're gonna increase that. Now, it was estimated from on the taxes, it would come out to be 53,000. So that's the number, 52 or 53.
It's I think for 8 to 20%.
Yeah, so they give us estimates like they said it's gonna increase 8 to 20%. It doesn't follow along with actual increase to pay.
Seems kind of odd to me. I mean, I was thinking about that being primarily FICA and Social Security, which are a fixed rate. So it seems high to me.
It seemed high when they gave us the percentage too. Yeah, but that's what we have to add in there is what's projected from the state that the taxes are gonna go up.
Yeah, unemployment tax,
Yeah.
everything.
The unemployment tax, there's a lot of things that change in there.
Right, but unemployment tax has got a very small increase in it. We've got two fairly large lines that have got large increases in them. And then on the other side, the medical insurance only went up about 2%. That seemed like it was a pretty small increase given what we typically see for healthcare costs. Are you comfortable with that number? Only going from 235 to 240?
We get that from SDIS, which is our insurance carrier. So those percentage numbers, they tell us to budget, you know, if we want to budget 2%, 5%. Maybe we've had them as high as 12% increase.
I mean, if you're comfortable with it, those numbers kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, I don't like to add too much onto that. They've been pretty accurate when we get the information from the insurance companies, what the projected increases are going to be. And sometimes they're less than.
John, sorry, you're on
So-
materials and services.
The HERS increase, the 20,000 was what they gave you, or is that also based on partially the 130,000 to 150,000?
That
Public
information that
employee
you get from
retirement.
PERS.
Oh, the employee wages increase, so.
Is that what that,
Okay, I didn't understand what you.
Is it based on the increase in wages?
Yes,
So how come it went up 15% where 4%?
PERS is a lot more difficult for us to budget because not everybody here on PERS has the same rate.
Oh,
So there are different levels of PERS
Mhm.
and there's different amounts that PERS charges you. Like this person, PERS could charge you this year 4%. And then another employee could be charged 8 or 10%.
Right. We've got all salaries going up 4% in this, so it seemed like it should be kind of pro rata on PERS.
Well, because Because everybody's, if you broke down with their wages and put PERS with it, then it would be probably more to what you're saying. But because it's all bulked in one line item, there's different percentages for just about, well, half the three anyway. So that's a aggregate number of everybody together, and then whatever PERS gives us, that they actually give us a list. Isn't there a list that comes for what you have to deduct? Because she has to enter the percentages into our software for the deductions.
So what you're saying is basically, this is data that you've gotten from the state.
Yeah.
To input that creates these numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we always have, this is not budgeted to the dollar.
Mhm.
We've had half years go by halfway through a budget cycle, and then we get an increase from an insurance or liability insurance or something like that.
Right. Okay.
Jim, did you want to say something?
No. No, I just blew my nose.
Why have we lowered the consulting service line?
Last year, we increased it due to the possible litigation.
Okay,
We didn't need to carry that much.
so we're returning to what it was before. Okay.
Thanks.
Any further questions on page 2?
On the O&M, that 22%, I mean, you've gone through all the work on that, but so thinking about the budget memo that you put together, John, and the statement about tariffs, how are tariffs factored into that increase?
We've been getting letters from our vendors and suppliers, and they're very generic on, they're not going to say, well, we can plan for a 25% increase.
Right.
They're saying that they're not going to hold their quotes or estimates
Right.
until delivery.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the best guess I can come up with. What I'm projecting has to be repaired or replaced coming this next fiscal year.
Can you provide any sort of estimate as to what tariff level this would absorb? I mean, we know it's a crapshoot right now, but I mean, if it's 10% and then tariffs come in at 20%, and we know we have risk. If they come in at 5%, then you've got benefit. If they come in at 10%, you're dead on. Is there kind of a benchmark or baseline you can say that?
On the tariffs, there was no way for me to benchmark it when I couldn't get it out of the purveyor.
Right, but you included something.
Yeah, so I included, like I can tell you, our water bill is gonna double from a little 2,000 over 4,000.
Not due to tariffs.
Not due to tariff. Okay, we already know, which, as you see, electricity is gonna go up, so we accounted for that.
Right.
Okay. There's no way I could budget enough to be safe with tariffs without bankrupting every ratepayer here. It's
Right.
too volatile.
But going back to the budget memo that, John, I think you're the author of,
Yeah.
what I saw,
The draft.
the draft. If we're going to talk about, the rate increase being associated with tariffs, then I think we should understand.
Part of it.
Right, we should understand how much is in there for tariffs, because there's some
Okay.
risk for
So-
everybody in this.
So we have to jump ahead here a little bit,
Okay,
but since you're on that subject, we'll do it. So if you go to capital resource.
Which page is that?
So the user fees fund both of these. So if you look at the bottom, you will see the increases to pick up for possible tariffs and breakdowns.
hold on. What am I looking at to see?
So
that?
under payments,
Yes,
okay, those are your expenditures.
Yep.
All right, so upgrades, replacements, we kind of know what that's gonna be. We up that a little bit. If you look at the emergency repair, that more than double.
Right.
So to cover for the tariffs, but actual without getting, I don't believe we're gonna get it on anything that would affect us that close. the 25% wouldn't be that great. Now, Olympic Foundry, who we buy our manhole riser rings and stuff for our collection system, they're probably, with the steel tariffs, they still can't even give us a number what that increase is gonna be when they have to make parts for our piping and stuff.
So you would say that $200,000 to $250,000 is tariff related, or?
No, I would say something more in 25 to 30,000 would be tariff related.
Okay,
So if you look at one, our main pump station, it's 13 years old.
right.
If we had another pump from that pump station completely fail, a replacement pump out of the 5 that are down there, they're $155,000.
Mhm.
What we had last year at 200,000, you can see you couldn't afford any more emergency repairs with other pumps.
Mhm.
And most of the pumps are anywhere from 25 to 50,000 at the rest of the pump stations each.
Mhm.
And every pump station has 2 with 1 spare.
Right.
And then Netarts has 4 pumps. Okay. Those are $65,000.
Right.
All right. And so if we have to do a total replacement, then we would have to be prepared for that. If we have to rebuild one, which is your cheapest option,
Mhm.
I've calculated in here, an emergency repair on one of those pumps, even a small one, is gonna be $11,000. Okay, larger pumps are gonna be, as the horsepower gets larger, the pumps get larger, then it gets more expensive to replace, to rebuild.
Right. So the majority, what you're saying is the majority of this line is be prepared for emergency repairs. And a smaller component of that is some tariffs in the neighborhood of 25 to 30,000.
That's kind of what I penciled in, what I'm getting for. A lot of the increases that we're looking at, they're estimating it's about 10%.
Mhm.
I haven't heard one from any of them yet, not even the one on the company suite. They're overseas. The one that we just ordered to replace the broken one down there, we're not getting any tariffs on, but that'll be the last one that we will not get hit with tariffs on. If you're looking at a tariff on $155,000 pump, you're looking at several $1,000s.
Yeah.
So we're not anticipating another failure, but it could happen. So the line item is read as major and emergency repairs. Pumps are emergency repairs.
Sure.
Because we have to operate according to DEQ, and it all has to be operational.
So do you have, you may have already answered this and said you don't, but if we go back to the general fund in O&M, do you have a number of, like you did for the capital resources fund?
You're talking about line 26 on page 2.
Yes, thank you, Simeon, line 26.
Okay, so DEQ and our new permit that just went into effect March 1st, they're requiring us to reduce I&I, inflow and infiltration. We've been budgeting out of this O&M about $40,000 a year is what we spend out of that. Well, I already know from our vendor that does our point repairs and repairs the collection system that cost is going.
So that's
now,
not tariff related, that's just
that's not, there'll probably some tariffs in there, but they already told me, figure it's gonna be a 20% increase on their side. So I took that 40,000 and up. That's what all of this is.
And
So you
that's,
have really-
that's a consequence of the renewed license.
That's a consequence from DEQ enforcing it now.
Yeah.
It's always kind of been in there, only now they put it in as an enforcement.
So can I, if I were to restate that, you've used the quotes that you're getting, which may or may not have tariff impacts in them. They haven't explicitly stated that to you, so.
Right.
Uncertain.
And the likelihood, we stocked up this year on what we think we need for a collection work next year. So we're pretty safe on that type of tariff hit. Now, if there was an earthquake and it took out quite a distance of sewer line infrastructure, damage the pump station, then that's when we have to go back to emergency. But it's not, I'm not budgeting enough to replace all 22 miles of sewer line.
Dan, back on page 4, system expansion as well as zero.
So system expansion doesn't need to be in two places. So we had system expansion in here, but after we did the SDC fund, system development charge, all the expansion can come out of that.
Okay,
So we eliminated that instead of carrying that increased cost on this particular line.
biosolids management doubles.
So if you look at system expansion went to zero from 113,000, and if you look at transfer out to other funds, went to zero. So instead of increasing user rate further, I absorbed that money into the increased cost for the rest of that.
In terms of biosolids, one of our lagoons is close to full.
Close to, okay, so you have to.
So, yes, well, we won't do it next year, but we need to start putting money into a budget line because we know the cost is coming.
Yeah, so you will see that increase in the budget next year.
Mhm.
I'm not saying increase youth events, and that budget will increase next year till we get to at least $250,000.
So you may not, are you saying you may not spend this money in the next year, but you're kind of holding on to it there, and that'll then reflect.
USDA,
And
they all require us to show that we're budgeting for these expenses.
right.
So you won't spend any of that 185 this next fiscal year,
Right,
but probably we'll start spending it within 4 to 5 years.
right. So you're basically reserving it.
We're
if you will.
reserving it now, yes.
Because there's no way we could budget for the cost of it in
All in
five
1 year.
5 years. It's just, yeah.
So if I needed to increase that, what I would do is zero out, say, vehicle. I would take those funds and I would put it down to that. So I would decrease it by $50,000 and move that into that one. But we have to account for all the money we have in the bank.
Mhm.
Otherwise, the government says you're not doing your job and you're not prepared if something.
Can we go back to page 3 for just a minute?
Three,
Yeah.
okay?
The cost, this is line 2 under requirements, the future Avalon pump station. Remind me when we actually start spending the cost on that. Is that going to be in this budget?
We've already started.
Yeah, I know we've started, but the big expense on that.
The big expense will probably hit to the very end of this next fiscal year.
Okay.
We'll spend quite a bit of this trying, just going out to bid, getting design done.
Yeah.
And completed and permitting all that. And then once we go out to bid. So I'm prepared for it to go out to bid at some point in this fiscal year. I just don't think it's gonna happen realistically until probably May, maybe even June, actually, break ground.
Yeah, so we'll be breaking ground a little later than this next year.
Hopefully, if we can get the easements.
Okay.
Easements can work.
Can you give everybody just a very quick capsule of what the future Avalon pump station, where it is and what it's about? Because I think some people may not know.
So on the lower end of Grand, at the bottom, down there where Grand goes down, and then you have Hillsdale comes across, goes around south. At the very bottom, where all the brushes and there's nothing built, all the way down to the V down there.
Mhm.
The first 2 lots right along Grand will be the district. We own those.
Mhm.
That will be the site for the pump station. And sewer lines will run up through, like where the houses are built now, right off the hills down in Grand. The sewer line will run up at the base of theirs. That'll remove them off ejector pumps. This will service around 25 lots right there, and it'll service the lower ones, just have garages. So everything down there will be serviced with sewer. All the lots will be able to hook the district sewer.
And there's a lot of lots down there which can't be developed right now because the size of an injector pump you would need to get it up to the sewer line is
Well, and
prohibitive.
the lots down there, the county will allow them to re-split those back into 25-foot lots. So virtually you have to plan for something that could triple the amount of. Not all of them do it. Some of them like to keep their, even though they're able to go to 25-foot lots. A lot of them are keeping them at 75 feet wide or even 50 feet wide.
So system development charge is 13,000 something.
Yeah, 13,000, yeah, 800.
Yeah, so it's basically somebody wants to build a new home and they want to hook up to the sewer system. They're going to pay that fee, which is, what is that? 1,250,000, 1 million. And that's available exclusively for development.
And you'll see the cost increase. I did take in consideration here quite a bit on tariffs.
Okay.
For materials.
Okay.
And I did meet with the engineers and suppliers on to try to get estimates on that.
Okay. But all of that can be funded out of the system development charges.
Yeah, that's correct. Engineering. everything.
Separate account.
Yeah.
We just finished the wetland study down there. It's not considered a wetlands. But now we can move into the next stage of design.
So, where do you think we are? About page 4?
I think we ended up on, I think, O&M, didn't we? On page 2.
Yeah.
I think they did on that, correct?
Yeah.
System development charge, we went over that a little bit. Are there any other questions? I know.
So then, we're down to what, page 4?
Mhm. We talked about a fair amount already. Can we look under requirements at line 6, this transfer out to other funds, which has been 100,000 in previous years, and we've got it at 0. I know that's gone into the general fund in the past, but what has changed there?
We've never transferred out,
Oh, okay,
so we just zeroed it and then put that money into other line items.
okay.
Yeah.
So even though we budgeted it in prior years, that has never actually been moved.
No,
Okay,
same reason we took out system expansion, that comes out of SDC, system development charge, so it's going to be down in 2 places.
okay.
And then, page 5 has been sitting there for pretty much a number of years. When the new plant was developed and the costs skyrocketed as far as property taxes, I think this was more or less created thinking that there were probably some people that couldn't afford to pay monthly charges. So it could be accessed. We have a set of instructions as to how a person might access that.
I believe this is set up for 65 and older.
We changed that.
We did change it?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
But we have some
In-
revisions we still need to do.
In 23-24, if you look back at page 1, line 16, when we created the fund, which is reflected on page 5, we changed the definition of who was available to it to it's just an income.
And this is not part of the user fees, this
Yeah.
is voluntary, these are donations.
Yeah.
So we have to keep the donations separate, we're not allowed to use donation money off of the system. That's why this fund was.
Yeah.
And then we have the debt services fund, which is pretty much a constant. And you should have a sheet at the back of the budget that we created. This gives you some idea, a better idea, I think, of what's out there. It's not actually part of the budget. It's this sheet. Should be at the very back.
Hey, we pay one of these off in 2026.
Yeah, one of those.
That's right.
Yeah, should. But the whole idea of that was to tell you where we were at with these various bonds and other cost factors that basically go into the property taxes.
Right. So the assessor's collecting them, or maybe either getting paid off, or however it happens, that you're just accounting for it here, but not actually really handling much of the money. Is that right?
They collect it, send it to us.
Yeah, okay, and then you pay it, okay.
Yeah. And you can see that at least one of these, the revolving fund, will be paid off, the EQ loan be paid off next year in August. Which is nice to get rid of that amount that's still there.
Is that separate? That's not on your property tax statement. Is
Yes.
that included in your property tax?
Yeah, all of these
Oh,
are.
they all are.
So one of them actually goes away.
That's,
Yes.
yeah.
And we'll get another one probably.
That's why when you look at your property tax bill, the schools are the biggest hit, but we aren't that far behind due to the plant and the cost of its construction, 10 to 12 years ago. But anyway, this gives you a summary of what's out there.
And sometimes we keep money in that we don't spend because the tax money to make these bond payments don't always come in on time.
Right.
But we're required to make them. So other funds have to carry those payments until we start receiving the property tax. And not everybody pays the property tax every year. So we still cover the bond payment.
And you'll see the outfall bonds, that's our discharge point out in the ocean. And the cost of putting that in. And we're looking for deep sea divers, if anybody's interested in, job, to check that every couple of years. Sue, I don't know if you want to try that or not.
I'm up for anything.
Excuse me?
I'm up for anything.
What certification do I need then?
Yeah, right.
Those are going to be certified for
How much
this.
does it pay? How much does it pay?
So
And we have to now, with our new permit, we have to inspect it once every 5 years.
once every 5 years.
It's roughly about $15,000 to $20,000.
So I think that's a rundown, a little bit longer, but nevertheless important. Any other questions for the first meeting?
How did we come up with the $10 increase? I'm trying to figure out how to reconcile some of these increases. If I look at page 2 on the general fund for the requirements a year have gone up 6%. But going from 85 to 95 on the rate is double that increase. And I kind of struggle to figure out how all that's working together.
So on which fund were you using for an example?
General fund.
And the general fund? So I track this month to month myself. User fees are on capital resource and on general fund. So on capital resource to date this year, we brought in $158,000. It was expended $309,000. On general fund to date, we filled out $1,171,000. We received $1,173,000, and we expended $1,098,000 for average. Okay, which includes payroll, includes all that.
Right.
So we're running up right at the very edge. And that's why the increases that proposed are that to cover the increase from that service.
I heard all of that. It didn't stick as well as I wanted it to.
Okay, so I have to plan ahead for repairs and replacement
Right.
and operation.
But all that's reflected in the budget document,
It's
right?
in the budget, but you're asking for more clarification of why did it increase that much?
Not why did it increase this much, but the increase in the budget from last year's budget is about 6% for the general fund. But the fee that we're proposing is going up 12%.
Well,
From
10, 11.
11.8, I think, so almost 12.
Are you talking about off the full 85 or what do you?
Yeah, going from 85 to 95.
Right,
But
It is-
not the
it's a
full
$5
95 that
increase
goes into
to
general.
capital resource, a $5 increase to general.
Okay,
So currently you would have to look at how the user rate is split between.
okay, and I haven't done that, so
Right.
that's helpful.
Right.
Okay.
So what's the split? In there, how much of the 85 goes into general and how much goes into capital resource?
75 and 10.
75 and 10. It will go to 80 and 15.
10, 15. Okay, so I think that would answer the question I started asking on the general fund. If we then focus just on the capital resources fund, the total requirements there went from 938,000 to almost 1.1 million. I don't know what that number is.
I have to
50%.
anticipate, the auditor, we spoke with them, met with them, and we have to anticipate, we have to budget for no money coming in. We know that we're gonna get money from insurance to be paid for the extreme damage to the main station. Right. Normally, we wouldn't have put that much in there. But because we know that we're gonna receive it next fiscal year, we had to include that money in there.
Right, so you're telling me why your budget number is high, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so, but I'm saying that's only maybe 10-15% higher than this year's budget. But the rate going from 10 to 15 is going up 50%. That feels out of line. If we're going,
50%.
well, the numbers you just gave me were that the $85 is split 75 and 10. If we go to 95, that's going to be 80 and 15.
Our expenditures, this is an emergency expenditures, our expenditures out of capital resource, we brought in 158,000, we've spent 309,000 on repairs.
Right, I'm just going off the budget documents because that's what we're being asked to do.
Right,
It's kind
so
of
the
going-
budget documents reflect with what we've spent this year depleting that fund and what we anticipate we're going to have to spend next year.
I think the part of the answer to the question is what we talked about at the beginning of the meeting. If we knew what actuals were,
Exactly.
then you
Right.
can better understand the rationale.
Right,
For the
so if you
level
had
of
this other
increase,
sheet, that's.
Seeing, yeah, seeing how money has actually been spent as opposed to the budget would help. Me not,
It might not answer the question, but it might.
but
help
it's
you out.
still,
I think it would bring your delta rate. It would be a 50% increase. It has to increase, but I have to take in consideration what we're going to spend next year.
Right,
Right now, we expended double what we brought in this year so far out of that capital resource.
right. But if you look at that capital resources fund document, the third column which totals up to 938,000. So to the left of the words, the third column. So this year's budget, 2024, 2025. 938,000, and presumably that was supported by a $10 fee. Because that's what we have currently. If we go forward to this year's proposed budget, you're telling me that the fee will go from $10 to $15. That's a 50% increase in the fee. But
So
the
you're-
budget is only going up
So
by,
under line 6, it's 309,870. Last year at $10, it was 202,006.
thank you. Thank you. I was looking at the total and you're redirecting me to the actual fee line. That's what I was missing.
Yeah, that's the
Thank
actual
you.
fee line.
Thank you.
Well, I misunderstood what I think what you were saying, but your actual fee line, because up here you have to look at, we have to estimate what insurance we've seen. We have 25,000 there.
Yeah. No, you've answered it. I was trying to do my math off the wrong line.
Okay.
Now that we've had that discussion, John, do we want to talk about that pump failure and the costs associated with it, since in the letter? We don't mention it in the letter specifically, and under the why the increase. It seems as if part of that increase is in fact to pay for.
It is not.
It's not.
It is not.
Okay.
It's all reimbursable, but we had to, and
It's just.
I didn't like it
comes
because
in.
it makes the budget look like, if you look at the very top on your capital resource, 711,000 cash carry forward. Well, that was that much last year because we hadn't been invoiced yet for the manual transfer switch.
Oh, yeah.
Generation.
Yeah.
But we had to add what we estimate the insurance, what they're gonna pay, reimburse. So if they're not gonna reimburse us this fiscal year, we had to add that 50,000 or so, or 40,000 up top to
Okay.
anticipate it's coming back again. He went through it because I didn't understand how we were gonna receive money back with insurance, pay it out of our funds, and then we had to account how to put it back.
Right.
And this will pass audit, if that's how you know this. So.
Okay.
So that wasn't an increase. We're not really carrying
Yeah.
758,000 truly, because it's gonna come out, it's gonna show in next
Yeah.
budget.
By the way, I like this letter better than the letter we sent out last year. It explains things more clearly. So thank you.
You can-
Thank you
Thank John, yeah.
Thank you, John. For the revision.
Okay, I'm going to be the contrarian here because
Okay.
part of this that I find kind of confusing. Under why the increase, the first sentence kind of sounds like we're saying that inflation is low, but it's also not. We say, while it's low, it's yet causing a not insignificant impact, which would say it's creating a significant impact. So
Well, I was kind of torn a little bit. What is inflation running? Only 1.5%?
two by twos.
I twos. Yeah, it's the 2 is the target. We're not there
It's
yet.
close to 3.
It's close to 3,
Yeah. So, I mean, I can change it.
and it might be going up.
There was a
Yeah.
3%.
Yeah.
and that is just a first draft.
Sure. I'm just providing you some feedback on
Yeah.
it from that perspective. And then the other part of it is we talked about tariffs in here, kind of putting it off on there, but yet when we talked with, we hear Dan talk about it, that doesn't sound like there's a lot that's explicitly built in for tariffs. So I'm kind of having a hard time reconciling what's in the numbers with what's in the words in tariffs.
This tariff thing seems to be by country, and I am not sure or don't know what Sweden is doing as far as how, but that seems to be our main supplier of equipment and motors and such.
Well, Cummins, we got the same letter from Cummins with all of our generators, all
Yeah.
9 generators are coming. The problem with a lot of these manufacturers, they may say they build it here in the US, parts don't come from the US.
Right.
Yeah, I think tariffs are going to just be an issue. You're either going to say they're included in the numbers and then they don't come to be, in which case we're putting it off on our customers. Or you do it vice versa, and then you have risk that you haven't collected money for tariffs, but you incur them, and then we have that built in next year. Kind of in a in a situation where you're just playing a guessing game.
We are,
I mean,
just like everybody else, yeah.
I mean, will they get doubled tomorrow? Will they get rescinded tomorrow? Nobody knows.
So I'd like to make a statement so you understand how I look at these budgets. To keep the users, the ratepayers out of risk, we're required to keep this district running, everything operational by our permit, by EPA. So if we wind up shorting the budget and we have to go red any of these items, in order to make up for that, you have to go out and you have to borrow. Borrowing money is only can be put on a revenue bond. Revenue bond is exactly, hopefully what everybody understands, that's going on rates. Then you're paying that money out plus interest. And generally most revenue bonds are for 12 months. So I think risk management, a $10 increase is much cheaper than the option of cutting it back so thin that if we have a failure, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. I've never seen a pump blow apart like the one down did it to me. Okay. We have insurance to cover that, but what if that wasn't insured? Talking almost 200,000 or more. We're still counting on that.
Right.
You know, we're still bringing in how much the damages are.
Right.
So that's catastrophic. We didn't even have enough in our emergency fund to cover that.
Mhm.
We would have had to take the money from somewhere else. I don't know where.
Yeah.
But I do know that revenue bonds are the only option the board has to get the money that they have to borrow in case you have a catastrophic failure.
Right. Right. But I'm still kind of stuck on, it doesn't sound like we put a lot of money into tariffs into the budget numbers, but yet we're saying in the letter that rates are going up because of tariffs. So if tariffs double and we say, oh, we covered tariffs because that's what the letter said, and then we go, well, we actually weren't. That kind of puts us in a bad.
Oh, I see what you're
position.
saying by the letter
Yeah.
versus how the budget was put. I understand that.
Yeah.
We
So I think they're
can't,
saying
we
different things
cannot
right
put
now.
that speculation, in my opinion, on the backs of the ratepayers. Okay, I think we have enough money in our other funds that we can carry that through if the tariffs hit a whole 25% or more. We will change how we operate, I'll tell you that. Lower risk items will drop down and not be completed that year. We
Right.
will cut back on other things to make that work.
But then that may be reflected in the following year's rates.
It could be, yes.
Right.
So
So I just think we have to be careful in the words that we use to communicate this so that we don't provide a sense of relief from the community that says, oh, good, we're all covered for tariffs, only to find out only to a certain point and not.
So I agree with Craig that of all the sentences in the letter, that one sentence is the one I stumbled over.
Yeah.
That's okay. Maybe I'll take a pass at another draft of that sentence and send it to John, and
Sure.
we can see.
tariffs are the most popular discussion out there.
Sure.
I'll tell you what I'm more worried about as a manager, I've been doing this for so long. I'm worried about our liability insurance of all the fires, not earthquakes, but all the hurricanes and everything. Our insurance is probably more of a risk cost increase, I think, than even a tariff. At least with a tariff on materials, we can budget, we can move that around by, like, you budgeted to pave a parking lot, okay? I'm just using that word. So you don't do that this year. You use that money over here to repair your infrastructure, something that's damaged. What we have no way to foresee is what the insurance company is going to do. It's no matter if it's medical, no matter if it's liability, those I've seen are the highest risk. So I worry more about our risk with insurances than I do with this crazy tariff stuff. So, not that it can't affect us, but we have ways here. I planned ways here to work around that. Like, we stocked up on some of our metal stuff and
Right.
things like that. That's always sitting out back. Matter of fact, the guys just put it all away. So we bought that early, had enough left in that line item. We stocked up on that stuff. And most of the aluminum, because we use a lot of steel and aluminum. Most of that stuff we ordered in advance to get tariffs. So that'll get us through this next year, is why I'm not that concerned, cutting that much over tariffs. It's not that we're not gonna be affected by it.
Right.
And I think it should be in there, but it probably shouldn't be looked at as the main reason for any type of increase. It's actual, the treatment plant is almost 14 years old. It's been operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Things are starting to wear. PLCs are expensive, ProLogic controllers, little mini computers everywhere here, everywhere. So those are high maintenance. They're not large per item, but we have several of them to get because we run into what's called obsolete. You know, I use the word obsolete. A lot of things you can't replace like you could. I used to be able to get over 20 years out of something, out of a main controller. You're lucky if you can get 5 or 10.
Well, there's also now a functional monopoly on supply components for some of the system that didn't used to be there. And the company that basically bought up all the little suppliers is obsoleting stuff because it's to their financial benefit to do that.
We used to have 4 main suppliers. We had Sanitaire, Letico, for our different operations. Even our lab equipment. Xylem owns it all now. We call one number when we need something for any of these components.
Right.
Because they bought everything. Some of our lab equipment had to replace because they bought up the equipment, deleted it, and now you got to buy their own, and they're not compatible. So now you have to buy new equipment. You can't just buy a Pro or something like that. So
I guess.
so yeah, we have a cabinet full of obsolete only because it's not that old in comparison to what you should get for life out of something. So obsolete gets us all the time.
So if we've sort of gone through things, for next month, I don't, with all the discussion, what changes the panel would believe need to be made to this? I mean, because right now I look at it and we may see the same numbers put in the next column, but if that's not acceptable to the budget committee here, we need to know what's going to work.
I don't see anything in the numbers that hasn't been answered or that I would object to from a just citizen review. I would like to see the letter changed a little bit, specifically with
Can do.
tariffs and kind of be more clear on what is the expectation that's included in here on inflation. Because to me, it kind of said 2 different things in its first sentence. That would be the sum total of my feedback.
And one important difference here is the age and equipment wears out. We all know that. Most of the stores that have cars that old, over some of the equipment we use.
I've kind of been dominating the conversation and I apologize.
That's good questions. Well, the only question I have, and it really probably doesn't relate to anything, but I'm just curious, how many homeowners have the service and how many homes?
How many connections? Well,
Just curious.
it's the simple is what 1,400, but there's different rates.
Yeah.
1,470 something.
Yeah, so some of those are hotels, they pay a different rate because they have more good. So as far, it's hard to tell you without getting in the software there at work. Just tell you which ones pay the current $85, which ones pay the $150 or which ones pay those. But in a round amount, the connections are that.
Okay. Just
Plus, we also have more permits that are coming for more houses. So,
and you can cover all the new housing.
Yes, the treatment plant, we're running at probably 40% capacity.
Oh, okay.
So Dan, one of the things that I think people are gonna ask is, well, you increased it last year and you're gonna increase it this year. What about next year?
Well,
I mean, what do we say? What do we tell folks? You know?
well, what we tell folks is, honestly, we have to look at that year to year. What if gas prices drop to $1 a gallon? That will certainly affect the stock raising.
Yeah.
I don't see that likely to happen in the next year. City of Tillamook, they raised my sewer 15%. So I'm now at $107 or $8 just for sewer. So I try to be more realistic of what we actually need without being too excessive with it. So I can't guarantee that we won't have to raise it a couple bucks next year or anything, any kind of percentage. I don't know that yet. I can't crystal ball it out that far. You tell me how many pumps are gonna fail. I try to anticipate the best I can with the condition we're running in now. It's unlikely that you can go year to year without small increases unless you want to get the rate every 5 years. So that was a complaint we got. We didn't raise them the right place. I mean, all of a sudden you raise $20 and become extremely unpopular. And one thing that I've been asked year after year is too small ones are. Don't do these large ones. So we're striving not to do them.
How many people don't pay their bill? I mean, do you have a lot? It sounded like you,
So I track.
yeah, just curious.
So, I mean, the last 3 years, it's been between $25,000 and $30,000 that we don't collect.
Really? Wow.
If we were water and sewer, we could turn off their water. Can't turn off their
Not
sewer.
hardly, no.
Well, you could dig them up and cap them
Oh,
off.
yeah.
And then
That
the
costs
county
money.
will come out, red tag the house, and then the house becomes unlivable.
Wow. Interesting.
So that's why we don't have any off valves for any of them. And then how it's assigned to the county on their property tax, the ones that don't pay. The board approves that, signs it over. There's no guarantee, so you're still out the money for the year. And so you're out the money for the year. It could take up to 4 years before you get that user fee back.
And if they're not paying, since it doesn't really make.
That's why I said 4 years, because after that.
Just ends up being.
Yeah, I think it's
property
auctioned
and
off.
selling it, or you collect when you sell.
And so we have to anticipate those that don't pay. And that's usually the average over the last 3 years, between 25 and 30,000
Per year or for the 3 year?
per year.
Per year.
Per year.
I think that's too bad.
It's worse than some, but it's a lot better than most. So I think you're absolutely correct. It is better than most. But what helps that too is we take credit card payments, and that increase. You know, it's a cost to take credit card payments. We also have less we have to, people don't pay.
Well, that's
Yeah.
a trade-off, I
So
guess.
usually November to January, if somebody's not going to pay, those are the months we see that we get the least amount of payment.
But you gotta pay whether you live there or not. I mean,
usually chalk it up. I usually talk it up to the holidays.
we were snowbirds, so, you know, we pay every month,
Yeah.
6 months, and we weren't there.
But I try to track the expenditures each and every month. That helps me get more of an accurate number. I'm not comfortable with anything less than the increase I propose. Not that you can't, but what risk do you want to take by doing it? That's how I look at it.
Okay, so what I've heard is basically we're gonna, for right now, leave the budget as it is and revise the letter. And then if anybody has any specific inputs or suggestions, to bring them up either to Dan, myself, in the interim, and they'll be looked at and certainly considered for input to changes to the budget. And we would present those at the next meeting. And then revise the letter and then meet again next month. Does that sound like a plan?
It does.
Okay, so with that, we'll adjourn the budget meeting.
And I know some of you just got your packets. If there's anything on those line items that are confusing and you want, feel free to call me anytime.
Okay.
Just tomorrow, I'm not gonna be.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll try to explain things.
But I won't be here.
So, 6:24, the budget committee meeting is adjourned, and we'll take 5 minutes and we'll go into the.
You can go, Greg.
No.
Okay.
You're done.
I get to go eat.
Yes.
John, I believe that the board meeting is open to the public and be part of public, so